Hey guys, it's Raythe here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the author of Everdark. Every week, I get together with the Everdark cast and we talk about things related to vampires, voice acting, and life. Sometimes I ask them questions, but sometimes they ask me questions. And by the way, we want to hear your answers to those same questions in the comments. Okay, so we are going, and now I wonder, because we're going into a subject here that is something you may or may not want to answer, but I think that the audience will want to know. But you only answer what you're comfortable with, because we're talking about being in love. This chapter 17, is going to have Damon and Julian alone for the first time in the same room, in the same universe, since Damon turned Julian. There's going to be a lot of banter and more than a hint of romance coming up. So here's where we come to the number one question that people ask actors when they play lovers. And I know you're all groaning. Just, keep that mute button on. Okay. How do you act like you're in love with another person when it's only your character that is? And this is something that people don't know. And I think this actually comes in a little bit later, but you aren't all in the same room when you're doing your scenes. Like Edward, you're doing your scenes separately from Adam. And here we have like Julian and Damon, banter and the physical attraction. How do you do that? How do you get that across when you're not even hearing Adam? Or in Adam, you're not hearing Edward.
Well, I think that's like I was talking about earlier. The fun part about acting for me is getting to play through the emotions of somebody else from a safe place. And as someone who has been lucky enough to have felt love before and attraction to somebody, those are accessible emotions. Some actors there's different names for it, but people call it parallels or emotional recall. But it's the theory of acting, of using real experiences from your own life and drawing up that as kind of the seed of emotion to build on a scene like that, whether it be playing extreme fear or sorrow or love or any of those things, right? And different actors commit to that in different ways. I happen to be of the school of thought, again, as a pretty analytical, maybe like emotionally removed person, especially when it comes to my art. I tend to use it in an analytical way. I don't go too deep. I don't drudge up, old horrors from my past just to play, play those as for acting's sake. But for something like this, where you're playing a love scene or those kinds of intense emotions, even intense positive emotions, I find that's kind of where my process starts, is not only putting myself in the shoes of that character, but taking a really specific example or a specific feeling from my own life to get to that place pretty immediately. And what I found with this, and what I found with playing Julian, is again, because I find Julian to be very dissimilar from myself, but it's actually quite fun to be able to put myself in the shoes of someone who is as impulsive as Julian is and as passionate as Julian is. So experience those same things I feel, again, seeds of love or whatever that I felt really as myself, as Adam, but as somebody who would experience that maybe differently or maybe experience that more intensely, if that makes any sense.
It definitely does. I mean, it's the one benefit of acting is that you get to be whomever. You don't have to be you. And that's for writing for me, it's the same way. I get to inhabit people who do amazing things that I could never do and never be based on who I am. But I get to experience that, tangentially, just living it. I call it method writing versus method acting. For me as a writer, I will say that the love scenes are no different than any other scene. I'll say this because you are always behaving as that person. You're inhabiting that particular character. So you obviously you're drawing from your own past, but I think once you get to know them, and we definitely do know these characters at this point, you sort of understand where they would be coming from romantically. Like if I haven't written something where we get to earn this moment between them, that's not your fault. That's my fault, as the writer, to be perfectly blunt. So I hope that, I give you enough material to work with. I think it's because people separate romance from life, which is like a really weird thing to say, especially as a romance author, but they do. And so I think that they put more weight on it. And I think the relationship between Christian and Julian and Arceus and Balthazar is just as important as the one between Julian and Damon and Damon and Balthazar, as we find out, because the listeners are falling in love with these couples, both sides of them, and the other characters in there. Like I said about, Bruno, that K-Morn, people are in love with him and are very concerned about him at all times. So it's an interesting thing that they are falling in love with you guys, even as you're supposed to be falling in love with the other characters.
I'll bring something into this just because I want to shout out our editor, because truthfully, it takes a very skilled performer to be able to act by themselves, which is what most voiceover actors do. And it's magic, really. And the amazing skills of an editor who has a great ear for performance, has a great ear for timing, and a great ear for storytelling. And without Matt, who's our editor, there's no way we could do any of this as well as we do. It's not just us. There's so many people behind the scenes making us sound better and seem more talented than we are in so many ways. And I just wanted to shout that out, because I don't think that's a side of things that a lot of listeners ever get to see or really hear about. And it's such an integral part to what we do.
Yeah, trust me, guys, the editing is absolutely key, and how this sounds and how it is. I mean, but the actors bringing this out, they will take even the worst written dialogue and actually make it sounds good. But any of the failures are mine and mine alone. So I'm just really excited to see this all come to life, especially these particular relationships.
For me, there's a thing that is the other element, which is what you said as the third scene partner, which is the audience and the suspension of disbelief. Is that a person reading or watching anything who just wants to not engage will find fault. I don't know about you, but I watch movies and I listen to music and I read stories where I just like them. And they're objectively dumb. They're not clever. They're not highbrow, but I love them. And I think we've got to remember as well, that other element is the people who helped you write this damn thing, the people who I read this for, not just these lovely people here, but also imagining someone somewhere out there in the world listening to this story and being able to get away from their cares and woes of everyday life to sit here and be, yeah, what if? What if I could live like this? What if I could be loved like this? A little bit of escapism. And for me, romance is so amazing to act as opposed to playing, abusive, tortured monsters. Well, I guess we kind of are. But with love, it's so much more joyous. So for me, this is coming from joy and love. And that's the thing that I want to feel more of. So I think we've got to remember that the audience, the readers, the listeners, they are part of this creative process too.
I'm so glad that you brought in the listener, and you really do bring it back to where it should come, because I am always humbled, shocked, and sometimes scared when I realize how much these stories mean to the people who are listening to them. I will read routinely. I will get, emails and comments and everything about how this made their week go better. And, when it's been a terrible week and terrible things have happened, like deaths, things like that. And this is what's kept them going. And I think to myself, my God, to do that for somebody else is probably the best thing you can ever do. I'm not a doctor. I am a lawyer in real life, but I'm not somebody who has your life in your hands, but to make someone feel something, to ease their burden just a little for a short time is, like, to me, like the ultimate awesomeness. It's the ultimate goodness to which I can ever attain. So I'm so glad that you brought that back to us, Edward, to really talk about we're doing this.
We do once in a while get emails from listeners that make our day. When somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, today I was listening and it changed my day. It makes everything worthwhile. It makes every extra hour you put in, and it makes you want to put more extra hours in, because you're helping other people and it's not just a selfish pursuit, that you're doing this for someone else, not just for yourself.
And to the fan that keeps emailing me the Welsh prince that needs $5,000, I sent that on, and it should be there soon. And if you need another $5,000, I'll be happy to send that on.
Welsh.
The Welsh can need money too.
We love Jay. Oh God. And in a totally serious note, guys, listeners, please do leave those comments, and do feel if you want to rather email rather than putting it, in the comment section. We are all open, both Her Grace Reads and emails to Raythe Rain are in the links down below. So you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to actually let people know. And I really do encourage you to give nice shout outs, because this is a lot of work these guys are doing. This may be a labor of love for me, but they're taking on something that's just huge that I, to be perfectly honest, didn't think that anyone would take up. It was so much work and just so much effort and so much time, and they're doing it. So please do let them know that you're enjoying it.
And we do read the comments. Sometimes I regret that choice, but at the same time, sometimes I love it. I love it. And sometimes the ones I don't want to read have a really good point.
I know that's always the deal, right?
Yeah. But it's how to get better, right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
And I think that's our gift, right? As a species, is the imagination, the ability to see things not as they are, but as they could be. And I think that's what we're doing here together, both as the writer, the creators, the voices, and the listeners, the readers.
I hoped you liked this behind the scenes discussion with the cast and crew of the Everdark podcast. If you want to join the conversation, come to YouTube and tell us what you think in the comments. And just so you know, I'm not the only one reading the comments. The entire cast is too, and they're very eager and excited to hear from you. If you are already listening on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to get notified when the next episode of Everdark comes out.